The wind screamed to the canyon like something alive, tearing across the jagged rocks as dusk bled into night. Below, waves crashed against the cliff face, each one a deep, hollow thud against the stone. And there, clinging to the edge by his fingertips, was a dog, a German shepherd, trembling, whining, its claws scrabbling against loose dirt that gave way with every desperate movement. Ethan Ward saw from the road a flash of fur, a sound that didn't belong in that kind of silence. He didn't know then that saving the dog would be the easiest part of the night. If you like stories that keep you holding your breath until the last line, you might want to stay. There's more to this than meets the eye. The storm had rolled in early, sweeping across the Wyoming hills like a living wall. Ethan could barely see 10 feet ahead of him, the headlights cutting through a blur of rain and grit. He'd been driving home from Riverton after another long shift repairing fence lines on the old Carter Ranch. His back ached, his hands smelled of iron and oil, and he wanted nothing more than a hot shower and silence. But silence wasn't what he got. He heard it, faint at first, almost loss of wind. A bark, not the carefree kind. A cry, sharp, broken. Ethan slowed the truck, squinting through the rain. The road curved dangerously close to the edge of the canyon here. He rolled down the window, the cold air slapping his face. Another bark, louder this time, followed by a sound that froze him. A yelp and a sliding of gravel. He pulled over. The rain pelted his jacket as he stepped out, boots sinking into the mud. The beam from his flashlight cut across the road and caught a blur of motion near the edge. Something brown, struggling. "Hey!" he shouted, his voice snatched away by the wind. "Hey, easy." The shepherd's paws were sliding over the edge, claws scraping stone. One wrong move, and it would fall. Without thinking, Ethan dropped his knees and crawled forward. The ground trembled beneath him, loose shale, slick with rain. He could smell the sea air rising from below, sharp and cold. The dog saw him, eyes wild with fear, and growled low. "It's okay," Ethan murmured, inching closer. "Easy, buddy. I'm not going to hurt you." The wind howled, the cliff groaned, and suddenly the earth gave way. Ethan lunged forward, grabbing the dog by the collar. For a heartbeat, they both dangled, his boots digging into mud, gravity pulling like a fist. He felt the collar strain, the dog's weight jerking his arm until pain shot up his shoulder. Come on, come on." He heaved backward, boots slipping, until finally the shepherd scrambled up beside him, collapsing against his chest, panting and trembling. Ethan lay there, both of them soaked and shaking, the sound of the ocean below pounding like a warning drum. "Damn, you're heavy," he muttered with a faint smile, scratching the dog's neck. "Where'd you come from?" "Huh." The tag was military, dull steel, scratched but legible. It read, K-9 Shadow Handler, Lieutenant C. Reeves. The name tugged something buried in Ethan's mind. Reeves. Why did that sound familiar? He pocketed the tag and led the dog to the truck. Shadow hesitated, glancing back toward the cliffs, whining softly. Ethan followed his gaze. For a moment, he thought he saw something down there, a flicker of light. Then it was gone. By the time they reached town, it was well past midnight. The neon sign outside Marla's diner buzzed weakly in the rain. Ethan parked, wrapping his coat around the shivering shepherd. Inside, the diner was mostly empty. A couple of truckers stared at their coffee. Marla herself, a woman in her 50s with the sharp eyes of someone who'd seen too much, looked up as the bell over the door rang. "Jesus, Ethan, you look like death." "And what's that?" "Found him near Blackridge Cliff. Thought he was done for." She stepped around the counter, kneeling to inspect the dog. "That's no stray. Look at that build. He's trained. Police or military, I'd bet." "Yeah," Ethan said quietly, handing her the tag. "Says K-9. Belongs to Lieutenant Reeves." Marla's expression changed. The name clearly meant something. "You don't know?" she asked. "Know what?" She straightened, folding her arms. "Reeves was stationed out at Fort Hill last year. There was an accident. Or that's what they said. Training op went wrong. Whole unit died except him. And then he vanished." Ethan frowned. "Vanished how?" "Just gone. Left town one night. People said he wasn't the same afterward. The dog, Shadow, lifted his head suddenly, ears pricking toward the door. A low growl rumbled from his chest. Ethan turned. The bell hadn't rung. The door was still shut, but through the fog glass, he thought he saw movement, a figure standing in the rain just beyond the light, watching. When he blinked, it was gone. Back at his cabin, Ethan made up a bed of old blankets near the fireplace. Shadow circled once before lying down, his breathing steady but alert. The tag gleamed in the firelight, catching Ethan's eye again. Something about that name, Reeves. It wasn't just familiar, it was personal. He couldn't place it until he looked at the old photo on his mantel. Himself in uniform, for years younger, standing beside another man in desert fatigues. Both smiling, both alive. The other man's name tag read, Lieutenant Caleb Reeves. Ethan's breath caught. No, he whispered. He hadn't seen Reeves since Afghanistan. After the ambush, Reeves was transferred. They both lost people that day. Ethan lost his younger brother, Daniel. Reeves lost his entire squad. Now his dog was here, alone, covered in mud and blood. Shadow lifted his head, watching Ethan with eyes too intelligent to be ordinary. Something passed between them, a silent understanding. You came a long way, didn't you, boy? Ethan said softly, Why? The dog tilted his head, then stood and padded to the door. He whined once, looking back as if asking him to follow. Ethan hesitated, glancing at the clock, 2:37 a.m. He almost said no, but there was something in that dog's eyes. Not fear, urgency. He grabbed his jacket and flashlight. All right, Shadow, lead the way. They returned to the cliffs. The rain had slowed, but the mist hung thick over the ravine. Shadow moved with purpose, nose to the ground, tail low. He led Ethan down a narrow path cut into the rocks, one Ethan had never noticed before. They descended into the darkness until the beam of his flashlight hit something metallic half buried in the mud. A military crate. Ethan knelt, brushing off the dirt. The stenciling was faded but clear enough. U.S. Army, restricted equipment. Inside was a sealed black case and a file folder wrapped in plastic. Ethan hesitated, heart hammering. He opened the folder. Inside were printed photographs, grainy surveillance shots. The first showed a man leaving a warehouse. The next, the same man talking to someone Ethan recognized instantly. Himself. What the hell? He flipped through more pages, each one worse than the last. Reports, transactions, a document with a signature, or one that looked exactly like it. Ethan sat back hard, the wind howling through the ravine. This isn't real, he muttered. This can't be real. But it was. The file accused him of selling classified equipment, the kind that could get a man buried without a trial. He looked at Shadow. The dog was staring past him, hackles raised, teeth bared. Then Ethan heard it, the click of a gun behind him, step away from the case. He froze. The voice was calm, cold, familiar. Ethan turned slowly. A man stood there, soaked from the rain, rifle steady. His face was older, harder, but unmistakable. Lieutenant Caleb Reeves. Alive. Caleb, Ethan breathed. You're supposed to be dead. Reeves' voice was flat. Yeah, that's what they wanted you to think. Shadow barked once, low and warning, but Reeves didn't flinch. His gaze was locked on Ethan. You weren't supposed to find that, he said. But maybe it's better this way. Ethan swallowed hard. You think I'm the reason your squad died? That's what this is about. Reeves's silence was answer enough. You left the files here, Ethan said, realization dawning. You wanted me to find them. Reeves's jaw tightened. I wanted the truth to find you. Thunder rolled in the distance, and in that flash of lightning, Ethan saw it. The same tattoo on Reeves's wrist that his brother had. A chill ran through him. Caleb, what did you do to Daniel? Reeves didn't answer. The silence that followed was louder than the storm. Shadow whined softly, stepping between them. Ethan raised his voice, just barely above a whisper. Tell me what happened that night. Reeves's eyes softened, just for a heartbeat. You already know. Then he pulled the trigger. The sound cracked through the canyon like a scream, and everything went black. The shot tore through the night. Ethan's world folded in on itself. A flash, a crack, and then silence thick enough to choke on. He felt the burn before the pain, like a white-hot nail driven into his shoulder. His knees hit the mud, his flashlight tumbling from his hand, rolling toward the cliff's edge until it flickered out. For a moment, he thought Reeves had finished the job. But then he heard boots crunching closer through the gravel. "Stay down," Reeves said quietly. Ethan pressed his hand against the wound. Hot blood spilled between his fingers. He forced his eyes open. Reeves was standing a few feet away, the rifle still steady, his face a ghost in the fog. "Why?" Ethan gasped. Reeves looked down at him with something like pity. "You don't understand yet, but you will." Shadow growled from the darkness, a sound deep and guttural. Before Reeves could react, the dog lunged. The rifle went off again, the shot wild, sparking against the rocks. Reeves stumbled back as Shadow's jaws clamped down on his arm. The man shouted, wrenching free, and kicked the dog hard in the ribs. Shadow yelped, then darted to Ethan's side, hackles bristling. Reeves raised the rifle again, but something stopped him. The wind shifted. Voices carried faintly from a ridge above. Flashlights moving, 2, maybe 3. Reeves cursed under his breath. They shouldn't be here yet. He took a step backward, eyes never leaving Ethan. "You shouldn't have come back, Ward." Then he was gone, swallowed by the fog and the sound of the storm. Ethan woke to pain and firelight. He was inside a small cabin, his own. He realized slowly, the wound in his shoulder bandaged, the air thick with the smell of whiskey and antiseptic. Shadow lay curled beside the couch, his fur matted with dried blood, but his breathing steady. Ethan tried to sit up and nearly blacked out from the pain. A voice came from the kitchen. "You're lucky he missed the artery." Marla stepped into view, holding a pot of coffee. Her eyes were hard, but her hands trembled slightly as she poured a cup and handed it to him. "You dragged yourself in here half dead. The dog stayed by the door till morning. You're both stubborn as hell." Ethan managed a weak grin. "You patch me up?" She nodded. "You're welcome. Now start talking." He told her everything. The cliff, the crate, the file, Reeves. When he was done, she stood still for a long time, her face unreadable. Finally, she said, "You're telling me the man everyone thought died in that explosion is alive, and you've got his military dog leading you to some kind of secret stash in the canyon?" "Yeah," Ethan said, wincing as he shifted. "And that stash had files tying me to arms smuggling." Marla leaned against the counter. "You think Reeves planted them?" "He wanted me to find them," Ethan said. "He said I'd understand." "I don't." Shadow lifted his head, ears twitching. He stared toward the window. A low growl rumbled from his throat. Marla followed his gaze. "You expecting someone?" Ethan shook his head. Outside, the forest was still. Then, movement. A dark figure between the trees. Too far to see clearly, but standing perfectly still. Marla grabbed the shotgun from behind the counter. "Get down." The window shattered. Ethan dropped to the floor as glass sprayed across the room. A bullet thudded into the wall inches from where he'd been sitting. Shadow barked furiously, lunging toward the doorway. "Back!" Ethan shouted. Marla returned fire, the blast shaking the walls. The figure vanished into the treeline. Only silence followed, and then, faintly, the hum of an engine starting up in the distance. When it was finally quiet, Ethan's hands were shaking. "He's not done." Marla lowered the shotgun slowly. "You're damn right he's not." By nightfall, the rain had stopped. The forest dripped with mist, the ground still slick and dark. Ethan stood on his porch, shoulder throbbing beneath the bandages. Shadow sat beside him, ears pricked. The dog hadn't relaxed all day. "I know, boy," Ethan murmured. "He's out there." A single car approached up the dirt road, headlights cutting through the fog. Ethan tensed, hand on his pistol. When the car stopped, a man stepped out, flashing a badge. "Special Agent Marcus Heller, FBI," he said. "You Ethan Ward?" Ethan nodded warily. What's this about? Heller's expression was unreadable. Lieutenant Reeves, we've been tracking him for months. You're not safe here. Inside, Heller laid out photos and reports across the table. Reeves' face appeared again and again, grainy, capturing surveillance from across several states. After the Fort Hill explosion, Reeves went off-grid. We believe he's been targeting former military personnel connected to a black market weapons operation. Half of them ended up dead. Ethan's eyes narrowed. And you think I'm next? Heller didn't answer directly. You and Reeves served together, didn't you? Years ago, Ethan said, before my brother died. Heller's gaze sharpened. Your brother, Daniel Ward, was also in Reeves's unit. You know what the official report said. Ethan swallowed hard. Friendly fire. That's one way to put it, Heller said. But there were inconsistencies. Someone changed the logs after the fact. Someone who knew how to make evidence disappear. Ethan's pulse quickened. You're saying Reeves did it? Heller leaned closer. I'm saying Reeves is obsessed with rewriting what happened that day, and he believes you were part of the cover-up. That's insane, Ethan muttered. Maybe, Heller said. But from what we've seen, he's not working alone. Shadow barked suddenly, startling them both. The dog ran to the window, teeth bared. Ethan froze. Across the field, headlights glowed. 2 vehicles this time, moving slow. Heller drew his weapon. Looks like he found you. The next few minutes blurred into chaos. Engines roared. Tires crunched over gravel. The first truck slammed through the gate, headlights exploding in shards. Men spilled out, 2, 3, then more, dressed in tactical gear without insignia. Down! Heller shouted, firing through the doorway. Bullets tore through the walls, shredding the wood. Ethan ducked behind the couch, clutching the pistol. Shadow darted into the open, attacking one of the intruders who tried to breach the side window. The man screamed as the dog dragged him down. Shadow back. Ethan shouted, firing at another figure by the porch. He hit one. Another bullet caught Heller in the leg. The agent went down, swearing through his teeth. Go, he yelled. Back exit. Ethan grabbed the fallen radio from the table, hauling Heller up by the arm. You're not dying here. They stumbled toward the back door, but before they could reach it, the side wall erupted in flame. Grenade. The blast threw them both off their feet. Ethan hit the floor hard. The air punched out of him. Smoke filled the room. Move, he coughed, dragging himself toward the door. Shadow barked somewhere in the haze. Ethan kicked the door open. Cold air rushed in. They stumbled out into the trees, half blind from smoke and pain. Behind them, the cabin burned, the fire licking up the walls, devouring everything. From the hill above, Reeves watched through binoculars. He lowered them slowly, his face unreadable. Didn't want it to go this way, he murmured. But you left me no choice. Beside him stood a woman, dark coat, sharp features, holding a radio. Target survived, she said. You want us to finish it? Reeves hesitated. Not yet. He still doesn't know what really happened. He turned away, vanishing into the dark. By dawn, the fire was nothing but embers. The FBI called an attack by armed fugitives. The sheriff's office sealed the area. But Ethan knew better. Reeves was sending a message, one only he could read. Heller sat in the back of an ambulance, leg bandaged, wincing. He's not after you for revenge. He's after something else. Ethan wiped the ash from his hands. Then I'll find out what. You can't do this alone. Ethan looked at Shadow. The dog met his gaze, eyes steady, unwavering. No, Ethan said quietly. I'm not alone. Heller reached into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled photo. We found this in Reeves's last known hideout. Ethan took it. The picture showed 3 men, himself, Reeves, and Daniel, standing in front of Humvee, smiling. But in the bottom corner, someone had written in red ink. It wasn't friendly fire. Ethan's breath caught. What does it mean? Heller asked. Ethan stared at the photo for a long time. It means my brother's death was an accident. He turned toward the forest, the first light of morning cutting through the smoke. Reeves wants me to remember something. Something he thinks I buried. He clenched his jaw. Fine, I'll dig it up. Shadow barked once, as if an answer, and as the sun rose over the blackened cabin, Ethan realized the truth wasn't buried out there in the canyon. It was buried inside him. The road to Fort Hill hadn't been used in years. Grass grew through the cracks. The old military checkpoint reduced to rusted gates and forgotten warnings. Ethan parked the truck just short of the barricade, engine idling softly. Shadow stood in the bed, nose to the wind, muscles tight. The morning sun bled through thin clouds, painting the valley in dull silver. Somewhere below, the ruins of the base stretched across the ridge, the same place where his brother had died, the same place Reeves had vanished. Looks like we're going home, Ethan murmured. Shadow's tail flicked once, silent but understanding. They reached the old training grounds by noon. The buildings were half collapsed, weeds pushing through the concrete. A single hangar still stood, its doors chained shut. The air smelled of ash and something older, oil, dust, decay. Ethan ran his hand along the cold steel door. This is where it happened. He remembered flashes, gunfire, shouting, heat. Daniel's voice in the comms, calling for backup that never came. Then static. Then silence. Ethan gritted his teeth. You said you'd cover the flank, Reeves. You left him there. He slammed his fist against the door. The echo rolled through the hollow compound. That's when he noticed it. The padlock wasn't new. It was placed recently. Shadow growled. Ethan drew his pistol and fired once. The lock shattered. The chain fell. Inside, the hangar was dim. Sunlight filtered through holes in the roof, catching the dust in the air like falling ash. Rows of crates lined the walls, military grade, all marked for disposal. But one thing stood out. A table in the center, covered in maps, photographs, and a laptop running on an external battery. And beside it, Caleb Reeves. He didn't flinch when Ethan entered. He didn't even look surprised. Was wondering when you come, Reeves said, his voice quiet. Ethan kept his gun raised. You tried to kill me, burn my home. You think I wouldn't? Reeves nodded once. I figured you want answers first. Talk, Ethan said. Reeves looked down at the table, running a hand over the old maps. Everything you were told about Fort Hill, about that ambush, was a lie. The op wasn't meant to train us. It was a transfer. High-value assets. Black market prototypes. We were the cover. Ethan's grip tightened on the pistol. Prototypes. Experimental targeting systems. Reeves said. Stolen tech meant for buyers overseas. Command signed off. When things went south, they needed someone to blame. They buried the evidence, along with your brother. Ethan took a step closer. You expect me to believe that? Reeves met his eyes. You don't remember, do you? What? Reeves pointed at his head. You were there, Ethan. You saw the deal go bad. You pulled the trigger that set off the blast. Ethan froze. No, I didn't. You did. Reeves said, voice breaking for the first time. But they made you forget. Debriefing trauma therapy. They called it rehabilitation. You came out believing it was an accident. You buried it so deep you convinced yourself your brother's death wasn't your fault. Ethan shook his head, backing away. You're lying. Reeves stepped closer, eyes desperate now. You think I hunted you to kill you? I hunted you because you were the only one who could prove what happened. They've been cleaning house. Anyone from our unit. You, me, Daniel, all just loose ends. Ethan's breath came shallow. The world tilted. Flashes, light heat, shouting, snapped across his mind like broken film. Danny, he'd shouted once. The explosion, the blood, the sound of Reeves screaming through the radio. Shadow barked sharply, pulling him back to the present. Reeves lowered his gun, slow, deliberate. They'll come for us both now, but if you help me expose this. A single shot cracked through the air. Reeves staggered. His eyes went wide, a bloom of red spreading across his chest. He dropped to one knee, gasping. Ethan spun. The hangar door had burst open. Men in tactical gear flooded in, faces masked, rifles raised. Down, one shouted. Ethan fired back, dragging Reeves behind a crate. Bullets ripped through the air, splintering metal and wood. Shadow lunged forward, tearing into the nearest soldier, then darted for cover. "Reeves!" Ethan yelled, pressing his hand to the wound. "Stay with me?" Reeves coughed blood, shaking his head weakly. "Get the drive in the case." Ethan grabbed a laptop and the hard drive connected to it. The screen showed encrypted files, marked with military clearance. The kind no one was supposed to see. "Go!" Reeves rasped. "They want that data. Don't let them have it." Ethan hesitated, eyes burning. "Not without you." Reeves looked up, a faint, tragic smile crossing his face. "You already saved me once. Don't waste it." Then his eyes went still. Ethan clenched his jaw, grabbed the drive, and sprinted to the hangar's side door as smoke grenades filled the air. Shadow followed, close at his heels. They fled into the forest, gunfire echoing behind them. The truck was too far. The only way out was through the old mining tunnels north of the base. He remembered them from the old maps. The tunnel entrance yawned like a mouth in the hillside, half collapsed and black. Ethan ducked inside, flashlight shaking in his grip. The air was damp, heavy with earth and rust. Halfway through, he stopped, chest heaving. Shadow sniffed the air, uneasy. Behind them, footsteps. Ethan raised his weapon, but the figure that stepped into the light wasn't one of the soldiers. It was Marla. Her face was streaked with dirt, her eyes cold. A pistol hung at her side. Ethan's relief vanished instantly. "Marla? How? What the hell are you doing here?" She tilted her head. "You think I didn't know what you'd find? You think Reeves was the only one trying to keep this quiet?" Ethan's stomach turned. "You were part of it." She smiled thinly. "I was logistics. Someone had to make sure those shipments disappeared cleanly. You finding that dog messed everything up." He stared at her in disbelief. "You patched me up. You saved my life." She shrugged. "So you trust me long enough to hand over the evidence." Ethan's finger tightened on the trigger. "You don't have to do this." Her eyes softened, almost regretful. "I wish that were true." She raised a gun. But before she could fire, Shadow lunged, a blur of fury in teeth. The gun went off, the shot ricocheting off stone. Marla screamed as the dog knocked her to the ground. The pistol skidded across the dirt. Ethan dove for it, rolling to his knees, heart hammering. Shadow backed off, teeth bared, growling low. Marla lay still, clutching her side. "You can't stop it, Ethan," she rasped. "The file won't matter. They'll erase you like they erased him." Ethan's voice was steady now. "Then I'll make enough noise they can't ignore." He turned, leaving her there in the dark, the sound of her labored breathing fading behind him. Hours later, he stood on the edge of the canyon again, the same place he'd first found Shadow. The sky had cleared, washed pale by dawn. In his hands, the hard drive. Everything Reeves had died for. Everything Daniel had been killed over. He connected it to his laptop, waiting as the files decrypted. Names, accounts, transfers. And at the center of it all, a signature authorization code from a defense contractor linked to the Pentagon. The same contractor that had sponsored their mission at Fort Hill. Ethan closed his eyes. God help us. He uploaded everything. To the FBI. To the press. To anyone who would listen. The signal bar flickered. Then, transfer complete. Shadow barked once, softly. Ethan looked out across the canyon, wind in his face. "It's done." He sat beside the dog, letting the quiet settle in. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel empty. From his pocket, he pulled the photo, the three of them, himself, Daniel, Reeves. The laughter frozen in a world that no longer existed. He tore the edge where Reeves's face had been burned into his memory, then tucked it into the earth beneath a small cairn of stones. "For what it's worth," he said softly, "I forgive you." The breeze carried the words away. Weeks later, reports filled the news, a whistleblower exposing a secret military smuggling ring. Dead officers tied to illegal ops. Missing evidence suddenly resurfaced. No one named Ethan Ward publicly, but those who knew the story whispered it quietly in bars and base halls. Sometimes they said he was still out there, a man in his K-9, driving the back roads, helping where law couldn't reach. At night, under the endless Wyoming sky, Ethan would look at Shadow and see something familiar in his eyes. Not just loyalty, but memory, the kind that binds and forgives and stays. He'd smile faintly, hand resting on the shepherd's head. "Come on, boy," he'd say. "Let's keep moving." The truck's engine rumbled to life, rolling off into the dark. Behind them, the wind howled across the cliffs, the same place it had all begun, carrying the ghost of the past away, one last time,